What's going on, guys? Seth and Chevy here. We just watched for the first time, both of us, The Boy and the Beast, which is a full-length movie. Came out in 2015, and we're going to be talking about it. We'll probably talk spoilers, so I'm going to warn you now. I don't really have a whole lot to say about the specific spoilers, but if you haven't watched this, quickie review, I would recommend you watch it. You should go check it out if you're even slightly interested. It's worth watching. Watch through it. Come back. Join us for this conversation. But yeah, we'll be talking full spoilers ahead, and we'll do a real quick recap. It's going to be a little difficult, though, because I feel like there's a lot of different events that happen in this. But basically, after the death of... Oh, I thought you were going to say something. After the death of his mother, 9-year-old Ren runs away, finds himself in a beast world, a beast kingdom, an alternate dimension where he meets Kumatetsu. Which I have a whole list of the names. There's so many characters in this movie, and I had a hard time remembering all the names. But he ends up meeting him, who is one of two people vying for becoming the lord of this beast world after their lord that actually, or currently exists, will reincarnate and move on, leaving it to them. They're going to battle and eventually get to that. But yeah, he meets him. He becomes his... apprentice. There's a pupil. Becomes his pupil. They have a reluctant relationship. It's kind of rough because they're both kind of bullheaded, butting heads constantly. As the movie progresses, they start learning from each other. They start developing a friendship, a kind of father-son bond, in the absence of Kyuda, which is what he ends up naming Ren, Kyuda's actual dad, who he has not seen in a long time. Fast forward, and Kyuda gets older. He becomes proficient at what he's been training in, and he ends up finding himself going back to the human world and finding an interest in... learning things, education. He meets a girl, I forgot her name, Kaede, who helps him study and becomes interested in his pursuit of education, trying to get him into college. He also runs into his dad after many, many years, who's been looking for him, but he has issues kind of trying to find his place, whether he belongs here, whether he belongs back in the beast world.
Yeah, a bit of an identity crisis.
Yeah, he's kind of trying to figure things out, and where his loyalty lies, I guess, in what world. He ends up going back to the beast world, and around this time, Kumatetsu and Iozan, the two people who are vying to be Lord, end up having their event where they do battle it out to find out who will be Lord. Kyuda shows up to witness this and eventually helps out Kumatetsu, having him eventually win this battle. But one of the two sons of Iozan, which their name is Ichirohiko, is not able to handle the loss of his dad in the situation. Also is revealed, although we knew since the beginning, that they're human, and we were warned in the beginning of the movie that humans don't really belong in the beast world because they have a darkness to them that they can unleash. And we see this theme of Ichirohiko and Kyuda both having holes, basically, in their hearts that need filled, basically, and it poisons them. But Ichirohiko ends up attacking Kumatetsu, and then returns to the human world. This almost kills Kumatetsu, but during his recovery, Kyuda decides to go find Ichirohiko. It's annoying that I can't remember all these names from obviously when we watch shows, eventually I get the names locked in. But watching like a 2-hour movie, I'm like, I only remember some of these names, so I have to keep referencing this. Also, shout out to Jiro Maru, because that's the one of the two sons that's actually cool. We'll talk about that. That's the weird kid who likes
the actual boar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, Kyuda ends up finding Ichiro Hiko and confronts him. There's this big and kind of battle where Ichiro Hiko turns into a whale form, starts attacking him, starts destroying stuff in Shibuya, and Kaede and Kyuda end up running eventually, feeling like he's not going to be able to fight Ichiro Hiko. Kyuda tries to absorb, or starts to absorb, his negative energy into his heart. And it's going to kill him, but he's trying to sacrifice himself. During this time, we find out that Kumatetsu, because he did win this competition, he does become Lord. He actually takes the place of the Lord that exists right now and goes ahead and resurrects into a fire sword, which is wild, and comes to the human world, allows Kyuda to absorb him into his heart, thus being with him. Good.
Yeah, so which is a nod to early in the show where he kind of references like, the sword of your heart, and Kyo says that he doesn't have one, and so it's just kind of a full circle moment.
So he becomes that sword for him, and he's able to defeat Ichiro Hiko in a really cool sequence of sword stuff, and basically he absorbs him. He defeats him, even though it doesn't kill him. It shows him later. He wakes up in bed, basically curing him of this darkness that was taking over him.
Back with his family.
Yep. And then, which is good for Yozin because he seems to really care about him. And then, Kyuda decides to go back to the human world with Kaeda and live with his dad and pursue education. Now having the void in his heart filled with the beast father that he grew up with. Really interesting that he went from 9 to 18, 17. It's like a 9-year difference. I wasn't really ready for that jump, but it happened.
Yeah.
And that's basically the story of this movie. What do we think?
Well, I mean, I had like no idea what this movie was about at all. When we were kind of trying to figure out what to watch today, I just pulled some movies. Some I have some idea about, some I just were rated high among multiple websites, so I just threw them on the list. This was one of those.
Yeah, and I was interested in this one when you brought it up because, like I said before, back when this came out in 2015, I remember a lot of the movie YouTube channels that I watched at the time were all talking about it, and I was like, I wanted to watch it then, but I never watched it. And when you brought it up, I'm like, oh yeah, I wanted to watch that shit.
Well, and then another thing, speaking of like when we were both kind of doing, a little bit of research before doing this, you had brought up that someone had compared it to like Ghibli movies.
Yep.
And there is a parallel I did notice in this movie that reminded me a lot of Spirited Away, which is essentially the alleyway leading to the Beast World, or in Spirited Away, Sen going through and then all of a sudden being in this spirit world. So pretty fun little comparison there. Whether it's intentional or not, I don't know. But obviously there's something there, at least in like, Japanese fantasy, that situation would come up again like that. So my first impressions was, at first, the character designs are a little flat looking at first, almost kind of simple, right? And I've figured out why they've done that now as I've watched the whole movie. But at first I was like, it looks okay. But then the environments looked great.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
Really good.
It almost has like and this came out in 2015, so it's not a new movie, but it has like a older anime style to it.
It does.
Until you see it in motion.
Yeah, exactly. So that more like simple, not like, simple is such a bad word for it, but the art style they go for is to make, I believe, animation a little easier on them. as well, and other than just being like an artistic choice. And so in motion it works really well. And I've watched like even like One Piece does that. There'll be moments where things get a little simpler looking, but then movement gets really crazy looking.
Well, I mean, if you're actually hand drawing something, every single, what's it called, a cell,
Yeah.
the more detail you add to that for something that's being animated really well, so there's more happening per second. I mean, that's just gonna be a lot of work.
Yeah.
But this movie definitely has a more minimal style, in
That's a
my
better
opinion.
word for it than
Like
simple.
the hair is just like shaped but one color. But like Kumatetsu is like a furry dude, so there's a lot of detail you have to draw there. Even if you're not drawing in the texture, you still have to draw in the individual hairs and stuff. So they are kind of selective in the details. But I do agree that a lot of the sequences that were animated really well look super smooth, almost like, what's that old technique, rotoscoping?
Rotoscoping, yeah.
It almost reminded me of that. It looked like somebody actually choreographed and they drew over it, but I don't know if they did or not. But some of those scenes from a distance, they were drawn like kind of lower detail, but the animation was so smooth that you don't even really notice it. But there's, especially in the environments, you brought this up, the environments are like gorgeous. And I was intrigued by the character designs because of the art style that looks almost like late 70s anime.
Yeah, it looks like old school.
Yeah.
At least inspired wise, and I was kind of digging it, to be honest. So
Yeah. Yeah, at first, that's not an era in anime that I was really big on, so I don't have any affinity for it. So when I watched the trailer, I'm like, it looks so old school. But then, like, going through the movie and watching it, I'm like, there's like a certain fantasy feeling charm that's enhanced by that art style. So
yeah, well, and then like to go back to like the animation part, it was really enjoyable, in regards of like, whether it was subtle things like when Kumo was like ruffling up and his fur would get real like fluffy basically, and it would look really good and smooth as it transitioned from just like his normal quote unquote skinnier self to his more like bulky form. Same with I forgot the poor guy's name, Yozen. They did a really good job, especially because they would happen like in movements as well, which brings me to the other part I really enjoyed, which was the martial arts in fight sequences, because they used a couple different styles in this movie. They used like martial arts, they used sumo wrestling, and then they used like sword or kendo, which was really fun to witness all three.
There's a really interesting variety of combat in a movie that overall didn't have a lot of combat.
Yeah.
And I didn't watch it for that. I never expected that. But when it did happen, they treated it really well. Like, it looked great. And the variety was cool, especially with these fights that start out with like hand-to-hand combat moving over to like, sheathed swords being swung. But it always looked really good, and the choreography was really good, and the animation was really good.
Yeah. Well, even like when they first had their little fight in the market, you said they started off with martial arts, and then they just like puffed up, and then they started doing sumo wrestling, and I was like, weird transition, okay. And then they did sword combat as well, so really fun. I enjoyed that quite a bit, and they did a pretty good job of even in like the training montages and stuff like that, we still got to see like martial art movements, stuff like that, and it was always like buttery smooth, which was great. So
Yeah, there's some really cool ones. Especially, I loved the basically time lapse of them training in the fall, winter.
While he was growing up.
Yeah, those are a really cool scene.
Yeah, and that was the whole time. The transitions were really smooth. The animations were really smooth. It was just really pleasant to look at, while also like giving us the information we needed. Time was passing. He was getting better. He's getting older. Now he's a teenager, almost an adult. So pretty cool. I also didn't expect a passage of time, because again, I didn't know anything going into this movie. I thought he was going to stay a kid. So
Yeah, well, it's the boy and the beast, so
yeah,
I mean, I guess he's technically always a boy, but I was expecting it to just be like, him being a kid, like, like a Ghibli movie, they just stay kids. All those movies are just like about kids typically.
Right.
So I kind of expected something similar, but yeah, when he grew up, I'm like, oh, this just changed quite a bit.
Right,
and it
right.
happened like out of nowhere real quick.
Yeah. And then yeah, even like his relationships with people. I mean, when he ran into Jiromaru initially, and it was a fun twist, but at first he, very honest kid, was like, I don't like weak people. And because when he was a kid, he was weak, he bullied him. But as soon as he was strong enough to defend himself, he's like, we're best friends. You should come to my house.
Yeah.
And that was just all he ever wanted. Come to my house all the time.
Yeah, at first I was like, this kid's a little asshole. But then, like, as soon as he shoves him down, he's like, hey, you're strong.
Yeah.
It's like, that's awesome. You should come hang out and
Yeah.
eat candy at my house.
Dude, like, kid has simple needs in life.
Yeah, he's just testing.
I need strong
apparently.
friends.
Yeah.
So,
And then I love the scene, too, where he was eating that thing and they start going
oh, the dongo?
and start bouncing it back and forth.
Yeah,
But
it was ridiculous.
it's funny, too, because, like, right after that is, like, the transition to Kyuda getting older, and then like he runs by and that guy's also older, but he's like, hey, you want to hang out? Like he's just
Yeah,
like,
come over tonight.
he's just down to hang out.
So yeah, that was fun. Obviously we got to slowly watch Ichiro
Yeah.
start off as kind of like just more of like a underhanded insult while pretending to be a nice guy, and then like becoming more and more open about just not liking the main character Kyoda.
Kyuda, yeah.
And like you said, we kind of knew. It looked like he was wearing a hood
From the beginning.
At the beginning,
It's
yeah.
I wish they would have revealed, or they would have kept that secret a little better, because it was weird watching through it and like having people talk about how Kyuda's a human, and I'm like, what about that human though?
Well, and I just kind of took them at their word at that point. I was like,
Yeah.
I feel like he looks like a human, but if he's not a human, he's not a human.
But he's
I'll
like
just-
wearing an animal hat too, so it's like obviously trying to disguise him. But it was weird.
or just make him feel like he fits in or whatever.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it was weird.
it's also interesting to learn that darkness is the reason he could use telekinesis, and just that's how powers even exist, is through darkness and not through being a beast or a human. So
Be on the dark side, being a Sith.
pretty much.
That's when Ichiro Hiko was revealed to be being absorbed by the darkness. I'm like, so they're just revealing that they're a Sith, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
But then even Kyuda shot his sword at him when
Yeah.
he started embracing that. So
To bring up the side cast a little bit, I was getting really annoyed early on with Tatara, because
oh, dude, he's like one of my favorites.
he was being just a little prick the whole time. Like, just go home, you suck, get out of here, I don't want
and
you
then
here
he just
anymore.
lays around holding his gut the
Yeah.
whole time.
But then, like, all of a sudden, when we're 17 and like not a punk little kid anymore, he's like crying over him leaving, and he's like, I'm so proud of you, blah blah blah.
Well, even the part I love the part where Kyuda started shadowing,
Started getting good.
Kumatetsu.
Yeah.
And then when he just like walked up one day, he's like, wait, I know his moves without even looking at him. He just like grabs a broom and walks up, starts jabbing
Poking
at him.
Yeah.
And then the Tatara was just like, whoa, that was actually impressive. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was
I
pretty
guess I
funny.
was wrong about the shadowing being useless, type of thing. So obviously, a lot of the stories like earning the respect of people.
Yeah. Although in stories like this, typically, I always think it's kind of cliche, but I'm a sucker for it, of like people who don't like each other eventually becoming friends or whatever. But I liked that throughout this, even to the very end, Kyuda and Kamatetsu still maintained that like kind of talking shit to each other thing.
Banter. Yeah.
Yeah. It never like softened up. Even when Kyuda was crying at one point, he like, and it's in a loving way, but he's telling him like to stop crying. He doesn't like when people
Blubber or
Blubber,
something like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
and just like when Kyuda came to watch him fight, he was like talking shit to him basically.
Yeah. To be the cheerleader,
Yeah.
he was like, what are you still doing on the ground? Get up.
But it was still the motivation he needed,
Yeah.
because that's kind of their language.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
Yeah. And then Chico, the little mouse thing.
The thing.
They never explained that. So him, being the quote unquote voice of reason a couple times was interesting. He just would pull a Ratatouille and control Yoda for a second. I'm oversimplifying, but he was a fun little mascot. I think most shows tend to have one anyways. Simple design, cute. Showed up to be basically Jiminy Cricket a couple times. So, and then his relationship with the gal, what is it, Kaide?
Yeah.
I was a little worried because like the whole flow of the show wasn't really hinting towards like any romance stuff, and then they started developing a friendship initially, and there's some romantic undertones as it goes, but like it never like leaned into it too heavy, and I kind of appreciate that because that's not the show I was watching initially.
That's super typical of like Japanese stuff in general, though. When they do romance, it's like you have to just assume that
Subtleties.
Eventually that will bloom into something, but you're seeing it. Whereas like in Western media, people like meet each other and then like halfway through the movie they're already fucking.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like instant. But yeah, in a lot of Japanese stuff I always kind of appreciate it. It's not the focus. You understand that there's the implication that they care for each other, and that's all you need.
Well, and her character stayed consistent, which I appreciated too.
Sure.
Because like she obviously is a bit of a bookworm
Nerd.
to the point of like the delinquents didn't really like her and wanted to mess with her and stuff like that. And then even as we go forward and her way of motivating, going forward still was a lot of character that felt like her still. So even though we didn't really have her a lot in the show, she did a good job of being like basically the support in the human world for the main character, without being obnoxious in any way. And I appreciate that as well. So, characters in the movie just overall were well done. So, yeah, and then the ending, though, a little sad. Obviously, we now have someone who is gone, and basically,
They're not like actually gone though, so it's like bittersweet.
yeah. Well, I mean, as we know them, they're gone. They're just basically now the main character's heart at this point.
But it's bittersweet in the sense that they were lacking that. They had that hole, and that person that they grew up with and raised them becomes the thing that fills their heart. So I mean, there's like definitely like a metaphor there, but like
sure.
Yeah, it's sad because you don't want that character to go, but the character doesn't go anywhere because now they're with them always. So yeah.
And then he gets to find his actual family, even though I would argue the Beast people are his family at this point as well.
Yeah, I think it's good though that if there's no negative standing between him and his dad, to try and reconnect with him and try to build something that was lost. Is good.
Especially because in the beginning of the movie, it's kind of put in this light of like the dad just disappeared and is a piece of shit, basically.
Yeah.
But it turns out that wasn't the case. The family was just kind of like intentionally not involving him and giving him any information at all. So he was just kind of forced to not be part of the main character's life. So, it was a good reunion, and I felt for him for sure when they first reunited, because you could tell he was like trying to do whatever he could without being forceful. But obviously we had conflicting emotions happening in that moment, and trying to find oneself. So yeah, I don't know. Overall, I really enjoyed the movie. It didn't feel like 2 hours, which is always a good sign.
Yeah, it went by quick. Yeah, I really liked the movie as well. I thought the story was good. I thought the animation was really good. I thought the art style at first was not quite what I was looking for, but that went away really quick. Within like 5 minutes, 10 minutes of this movie, I was like, oh no, I actually really like the way that this looks. It's just, you got to see it in motion. You got to kind of feel the vibe of what they're bringing with the atmosphere and the characters, and I think it worked out really well. I really liked the characters. I really liked the relationship between Kyuda and Kumatetsu. I I even thought Eosin was an interesting character. They're not necessarily like a villain. They're just another, like, they're the person that's celebrated by the whole town. If anything,
They seem like the obvious choice to be the next leader.
they should be, yeah. And Kumatetsu is like this dude that's kind of like living in a small house with his boy Tatara, and just kind of like,
With garbage all over the
just
floor.
kind of schlubbing it up. But you know, he also has a lot of heart, and Kyoda kind of brings out some of that in him. But yeah, it's interesting that there was a villain, but it's not. It has nothing to do with the two people vying. There's at least still some honor there, which was cool. I liked the monk. He's listed on here twice for some reason, but one of them says Monk Momoaki. I thought he was an interesting voice in the movie because while everybody's being overly cocky or celebrating or being excited about certain things, he was kind of a voice of reason. He's kind of an interesting moderator between the two characters when they're fighting constantly. I always thought it was kind of fun when he kind of pitched in with you know, what was happening and what he thought about it. Tatara I thought was fun as well, even though he's kind of a cliche character, but I thought it was funny. He's just always chilling and making remarks constantly. I have two slight nitpicks on this movie. Other than that, I really liked it a lot. My two nitpicks is pacing felt off sometimes. The whole movie is great from beginning to end, but there's like a couple parts there where I felt like certain things were being rushed. Certain things were kind of getting, like, we spent a lot of time with this thing, and then all of a sudden this is happening, but we didn't really spend a whole lot of time with that. We move on to the next thing. I felt like the first half of the movie was paced really well, and then the second half, I felt like they had to get to major story beats and sacrifice certain elements in between. I almost wish they would have added another 10 to 20 minutes to this movie to kind of flesh that out a bit. It's not like that's not a complaint or like a big negative. It's just something that I kind of noticed.
Yeah, I would actually agree with you, especially when they're making the journey to meet all the other lords. That like flew by.
Yeah, that flew by, and that was a lot of fun. It was kind of cool that they kind of went around and kind of gained philosophy on what strength is from people. That was really cool. Also, I think the transition of Kyuda just leaving and going to the human world, like, I got the story, but I wish they could have transitioned that a little smoother. Maybe gave us a little bit more on the education aspect or why he's there, like a little more dialogue there with, you know, his motivations. Like, we get it, but I just wanted a little bit more to chew on.
Yeah, it was a little shallow.
It felt a little fast forward, and then just jumping straight to the event with Eosin and Kumatetsu fighting, which was an awesome scene. I really liked it. I loved like the heart and everything about that part of the movie, but it felt like it really just kind of jumped to that quickly. And then we went from that to like this really quick, like, all of a sudden we got this like evil Ichiro Hiko like shooting a fucking sword through somebody, and I'm just like, I wish we could have warmed up on that a bit too. And that's my second nitpick, is I think Ichiro Hiko wasn't handled well in the story, because at the beginning we don't really get a lot of info on them. They say a couple things, but like, they never come off like they're building up towards anything like malevolent. And then also that they're obviously a human throughout the movie, but it doesn't really get touched on until the end, which they explain why that is. But it's kind of weird watching through the movie and going like, that person.
It is interesting that I feel like I know his brother better than him. So,
yeah. And then the scene where he like fucking attacks Kyuda walking him out of the house, I was like, that I get why you're explaining why he did that to him, but we didn't really see that building in him as a character. That was like out of fucking nowhere. And then we go from that to him like really crazy. Like, I wish we had a couple scenes that kind of showed that building in him more.
Yeah, I agree.
It literally felt like, you know, if they went with the Jar Jar Binks as a hidden Sith thing in Star Wars, he's like this goofy guy, and then all of a sudden he reveals himself to be a Sith. Like, that's what this kind of felt like. Like, he's just kind of in the background going like, I'm one of the two sons. My dad's gonna win. I'm gonna fucking kill this guy. It's like, whoa, where'd that come from? And then he turns into this crazy psycho at the end, and that scene was also really cool. I really liked it. I loved the sword going his heart, and I loved the part where Kyuda, you know, dashes forward and hits him with the blade. Really well done, but I feel like we just need a little more time for Ichiro Hiko to kind of grow into this character. Just didn't have to be like blatant, like, hey, this guy's gonna do something really fucked up, but like, just give us some hints of like evolution in the character, because I don't feel like we really got a whole lot. So yeah, pacing and that I think are my only two complaints. I think those are fair. Nothing super negative, doesn't really change my view on the movie. Just some things I wish they added to it. But otherwise, I think the movie had a lot of heart, had a great story, had really good characters, had characters I cared about, was super fantastical. It's very, without saying it's like a Ghibli-like movie, but like, felt very Japanese fantasy, which I really enjoyed. I loved the beast designs. There's a lot of interesting ones, especially Kumatetsu and Yozen and how they transform into like kind of ugly
more of
beasts.
their like animal form. So
Yeah.
you had, a bear and a boar. So
Yeah. And I liked the subtlety of the at the very least strong friendship but possible romance of Kaede.
Yeah, you can take that in either direction.
Yeah. And Kyuda. I enjoyed that. And yeah, overall it's a really good movie. I'd like to see if this studio or this director has made other movies since this. We'll have to look into that because, I really liked it. So,
Yeah.
do you have anything else to say?
I don't think so. I think that about covers it.
Yeah. So we do recommendations over on TastyCast, over link down below, or gaming YouTube, but we don't typically do that here. But I would recommend this to loosely like everybody. If you're even like slightly curious about this movie, if you watched this whole review and got it all spoiled for you, I would say go watch it. But if you are somebody who watched it, recommend it to your friends. I think if people didn't watch this, they should have. So it's really solid. What would you grade it?
I think I would go with a very strong B plus.
Okay.
I did enjoy it quite a bit. I didn't love it, but I did like the whole journey. I don't know honestly what it could do to bump it up too much for me, but yeah, it's about where I feel.
Yeah, I'm teeter-tottering between B plus and A minus. Not a strong A minus though. It'd be like a light one, but because I really liked it a lot, and the things I liked about it a lot, I would put in A territory for sure. Animation, visual style, characters, stuff like that. But that pacing was apparent for me, and Ichiro Hiko's transformation I thought was borderline light switch being turned off and on. So yeah, I'll agree. I'll give it I'll give it a light A minus. I really enjoyed the relationships and the heart of the movie. So yeah, light A minus. I did really like it. I would watch it again. And it did have some moments that like felt emotional, which I always appreciate if I feel anything watching anything. So it was really good. I would definitely watch it and recommend it to people. So
Yeah.
Anything else?
Only that, as far as anime movies go, I have a small list for us to watch, but I would be curious if you've made it this far, if you have any suggestions of anime movies for us to watch. It's a little tricky, obviously, with things that are part of series because we would have to be invested in the series to watch them. But if you know any standalone movies outside of Studio Ghibli, because I think we've basically seen all of those, let us know down below.
Yeah. Movies we are considering watching are A Silent Voice, Weathering with You, which is something I really want to watch, Promare, which I also really want to watch, Red Line, which looked interesting, Sing a Bit of Harmony, Maquia, When the Promised Flower Blooms, and Trapezium. Those are some we were kind of dabbling with. And
that last one is more of a personal interest, but
Trapezium, is that what it's called?
It's about like idols and stuff. So.
Okay, well, sure. Theaters for now, is that out? It's like just came out.
is just now coming to the States. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll have to watch that. But yeah, those are some that we're kind of humoring on, so we might watch some of those. So if you have any recommendations, let us know in the comments below. But I think it's going to do it for our review for The Boy and the Beast. We both liked it. Let us know in the comments what you guys think of it, because I hope you've watched it. It'd be crazy if you just listened to this whole review and you're like, well, I don't have to
not
watch it
everyone
now.
cares about spoilers.
A
So.
lot of people don't. I for me, I do. So I always assume people don't want things spoiled for them. But I know too many people who like won't play a game or won't watch a movie, but they know all about it. And I'm just like, why? And like, well, I watched a video. I'm like, oh, okay. So if we did that for you, let us know what you thought of what we told you about it. And if you did watch it, what did you think of it? What were some of your favorite parts? Maybe you have some criticisms of it.
For this 9-year-old movie.
Yeah. But I'm glad we watched it. And it's a long time coming, and I think it's going to do it. So, yeah, I've been Seth. This has been Chevy. Stay tuned. We'll have other reviews coming soon, and when the new season starts, we will start watching something, I'm sure. But, yeah, we will talk to you guys later.